Good morning. Welcome to our Neapolitan session this morning, leveraging existing investments, improving linkages between ebooks and print books, a pilot study. Before we get started, let me go ahead and remind you, as we do with all these, please silence your cell phones, electronic devices, okay? And also, I think we got some seats around here. If you guys want to come on up, there's a few seats up front as well. Okay, so what we want to do is I want to go ahead and introduce Michael Levine Clark here. He's at Dean of Libraries at the University of Denver. And over here we have Bruce Hedrick, who is Senior Vice President, Open Collections and Infrastructure, JSTOR, Ithaca. Okay, so what we're going to do is they're going to speak, as usual, speak for a little while, then we're going to open it up to questions. So if you have questions, remember those questions. We are being recorded, so when you do come up to ask a question, please state your name and your affiliation, and we'll go from there. So please help me welcome Bruce and Michael.
Thank you, Bobby. Good morning, everybody. I see a dense fog out here a little bit. All right, so silence your phones, but don't put them away, because we're going to do a little bit of online polling here, okay? I'm Bruce Hedrick with JSTOR, with Ithaca, and thanks for being here this morning. What we're going to talk about today is a byproduct of a couple of years of Michael and I talking back and forth about a particular idea, and that sort of culminated in February, I guess, and when we were together in Australia, saying, hey, why don't we try a pilot out to test this idea we were thinking about. So when we submitted our presentation to be done here at Charleston, we had aspirations to be much further along than we are. So we've been running this pilot for about 7 or 8 weeks now, and we've got some early data that we're going to share with you. But what we're really hoping is to have, after we have a full semester of data, even 2 semesters of data, to really be able to see what impacts this idea has had, if any, as we move forward here. So let's get started. So for those of you with cell phones and want to participate in the polling we're going to do, because there'll be a couple of surveys as we go through the presentation here, you need to text the word JSTOR to 22333. Or if you've got a computer in front of you, you can respond at the web address that's up there. Okay, so let's start with a question. Well, one of the things we want to understand a little bit is the audience that we have in here, because we've got one of the things we're going to be looking at as we move through various phases of this pilot is how these things impact different types of institutions with a resource like JSTOR. Wow.
We forgot publisher vendor.
Well, yeah, I guess
that's what other is.
Other is. Okay. We'll keep going there. All right, so we got a mix of folks here, mostly research-focused universities and probably publishers and vendors in here as well. All right, just give a sense of what's going on. Okay, so one of the things we want to ask people is how happy you are with the return on investment you're getting from your discovery service. I'm asking these questions because these are the types of things that when we go and talk to people from JSTOR, that we hear. I did not expect D to be the heavy answer there. But I think, we're basically 10, 11 years into this space, and people are seeing different types of value and return on investment for those investments that they've made. So this is interesting.
Wow.
Okay. All right, I'm going to close off the polling right now. All right. Okay, so when I'm out talking to folks, one of the things I hear often is, we're not really interested, it's not that we need more content, we need to be able to find better ways of getting the content we already have used. We've licensed lots of things, and we just need to have better tools, better methods of getting that content out to people where they're starting their research. And yes, a certain number of people start the research at the library, but there's a large percentage that don't. So how do we get that stuff into the research workflow a little differently? On the infrastructure side, I hear quite often that these discovery services are expensive and challenging to operate sometimes, and oftentimes they're not generating the usage that we kind of had hoped that they would. And that's not the case everywhere. And certainly, this isn't about saying, being bad things about the discovery service, because they do provide a service for libraries. But when you look at the amount of money being spent to manage and license these things, the question about return on investment, which is one I personally have been talking about for 10 years, is one that I think is important. Okay, another poll here. What percentage of your faculty do you believe start their research at the library websites? Okay, everyone seems in pretty much agreement it's less than 50%. The latest faculty survey from Ethica S&R says that about 20% of faculty are starting their research at the library's website or online catalog. So we've got a whole nother expanse of the universe of your constituents who are starting their research somewhere else. And that's sort of the premise of what this pilot is sort of trying to look at. So we know that many users start at the library website. Not all of them, not even the majority of them. So how can we help the library build awareness that they've licensed all these resources that their constituents could have access to if maybe they knew better that they existed? So everyone's done a lot of work with Google and with Google Scholar, making sure that their content gets indexed, or doing the best they can to make sure their content gets indexed, because it's really challenging to find someone at Google or Google Scholar to actually talk to. So it's that black box that we're all trying to figure out. But what about other starting places like JSTOR? We know that a number of people in many different disciplines, particularly in the humanities and social sciences, do start their research at JSTOR. Now we can argue whether that's right or wrong, whether they should or should not. That's a different question. But people are starting there. So when you look, this is a chart that shows in 2018 where JSTOR saw references, where the referral links were coming from JSTOR. So you see about 20% of our usage was being driven by Google, about 10% by Google Scholar. Only about 3% that we can track was being driven by discovery services. And there's a large portion here that's in the sort of darkish red at the 41%. These are folks that we got no referrer information at all. Now, for people who are throwing or putting their people through a proxy server, this is some of that. But in the work that we've done, we know that at least 60 to 70% of these are people who are starting at JSTOR. So while it's not the entire piece of that pie, it is a large percentage of that 41%. The rest of it is stuff coming through the proxy. So for instance, index discovery service, we can only identify 3%, but some portion of those are coming through the proxy server, and so that number is probably deflated to some degree. We estimate this across the board for index discovery service to be somewhere around 8 or 9% of our usage. When you look at the University of Denver, which is Michael's institution, you can see they probably put a lot more through their proxy server than the 11,000 institutions across the board at JSTOR. They have stuff, obviously, Google and Google Scholar, and then we don't see as much through the index discovery service because it's probably being drawn out by the proxy server. But it's not too dissimilar. We still see a lot of people at Denver who are starting their research when they're coming to JSTOR are starting at JSTOR. That's their starting place. So we tend to think of link resolvers as tools for getting, for discovering digital content. And I think that's an important use case to do. But there's a lot of print at these institutions, at your institutions. And that stuff has been paid for as an important aspect of your collection strategy. So one of the aspects of this idea was, is there a way that we can actually connect people a little differently to print than we've done in the past? And I'll turn it over to Michael now to guide us through the rest of this.
Great, thanks, Bruce. So, why print? We did a survey of our users in 2015. We've done this survey actually 3 times over a 10-year period, and we asked our users, do you prefer print or do you prefer e? Just a very basic question, and overwhelmingly they said, I prefer print. But then we started to dig in, and we found it's actually much more contextual. And the way to read this chart is, if there's more purple and green, there's a preference for electronic. If there's more blue and red, there's a preference for print. And the more of the book they want to read, the more they prefer print. And then there's some time sensitivity in terms of how quickly can they get it. But the point here is that even for the same user, there are times when they prefer print and there are times when they prefer e. And therefore, we should be figuring out how to get a user from print to e or from e to print for the same title whenever that's possible to do. We also worry a lot about dead ends, right? I don't want there to be dead ends for my users. I want somebody who discovers something to be able to follow through and get to full text content and be able to sort of meet whatever research or teaching or studying need that they have at the time. We want people to be able to connect between our resources, and the more that they can connect between our resources, the fewer dead ends we will have. So another question, whether you have shared your institution's link resolver with Google Scholar. Fairly overwhelmingly, this is something that we're doing, and it requires, of course, for a student or faculty member to be aware that this is an option, and they can then affiliate their use of Google Scholar with the institution. But once they've done that, you can use Google Scholar to get to licensed content. So most of us have done this, right? We recognize that our users are often starting at Google Scholar, and we need to be wherever they are. So,
Michael, just one, with Google Scholar, let's also remember it's book and journal content
right.
only at this stage.
Right. And it's certainly not pointing, and the other thing that's important about Google Scholar is it's pointing to digital content. It's not pointing to all of the variety of print and physical content in the library. Okay, so an idea. We know that Google Scholar uses our link resolver to search results and connect people to content. We've already seen that we can put our link resolver in things that are not controlled by the library, and that drives users to our content. We also know that JSTOR already has our link resolver. It's enabled on the platform for, excuse me, for situations when there is no access, when no results are returned. The link resolver has always been set up to turn on and send people out to try to find content through our discovery system. So question, what if we were to enable this link resolver to allow users to connect from JSTOR to print or to license content on other platforms? Connecting from an ebook on JSTOR to an ebook on ProQuest, connecting from JSTOR to the catalog and therefore to a print book. What if we did that? So how did we implement this? We enabled the existing link resolver that was already established with JSTOR so that it would show up on any search results for content that we had not licensed from JSTOR. So we have a lot of ebooks with JSTOR. We have almost all of the journal content from JSTOR, but there's a lot of ebooks on JSTOR that we didn't have access to. And this is where, at least for the initial phase of the study, we added the link resolver. So only for things that we don't have licensed access to on JSTOR. And then we made the default an open search, meaning that if you search JSTOR at the University of Denver, it used to be the case that we didn't return results if we didn't have full text access to them. Now we do, because we know we can push users from there to that content in some other place. And at the very least, they're going to get it through, they're going to have the option to get it through interlibrary loan. We're going to run this for at least the full academic year, and we're going to monitor success or failure, right? We're going to try to understand whether this is actually making any difference at all in how users interact with these titles. Do the print titles get used differently or more? Do people link out from JSTOR to ProQuest? Do people link out from JSTOR to the catalog? And here's just an example of how it's set up. You can see at the bottom there that there's a book chapter. The little X next to the title shows that we don't have access to this. We don't have licensed access to this. And then the link resolver has been added down at the bottom. And for those of you in the back who don't have perfect vision, here's a bigger example of that, right? And you can see that it says your institution does not have access to this chapter on JSTOR, and then there's the option to link through it, right? So pretty basic. We've all seen this in other places, but I think adding it to a place that is primarily a full text tool is something that seems new to me. So what does this all mean? Users are exposed to the most relevant JSTOR content, regardless of whether it's been licensed. So if you do a keyword search in JSTOR, you get everything. It's not automatically limiting it to stuff that we've already licensed. And for non-licensed content, the user can link out to licensed resources through our link resolver, which is embedded in the search result. It's also embedded in the detailed record. So it's embedded on the search page and in the detailed record itself. And they can use that to link out to get that content in some other way. The link resolver checks access on other e-platforms, so it checks to see whether we have that ebook available through another aggregator or through the publisher or through some other source. It checks the catalog to see if we have a print version, and it presents the option for interlibrary loan, right? So the user, in a sense, maybe gets a dead end with interlibrary loan if they need it immediately, but we're giving them an option all the way through. And I think it's important to recognize that JSTOR is taking a little bit of a risk here in sending users to other platforms in most of these scenarios, right? So JSTOR is actually saying, we're willing to experiment and drive people to a platform that is not JSTOR to perhaps access that content. And I think that's an important thing to acknowledge. So what does success, or what would success look like in this project? Hopefully, as we go through this, users are connecting to more library content through the link resolver, right? We will be able to have demonstrable evidence that they are actually going out and starting at JSTOR and ending up with finding that content that is not provided for them on JSTOR. We hope that we'll be able to show evidence that users are finding and using print based on the discovery and the use of the ebook, right? So they've started with the ebook in some way, perhaps used it, perhaps not, but they've ended up linking from there to the print, and we have a print circulation to show for it. For the university, it would be, we're hoping that this will help us understand user behavior better. That might allow us to think differently about how we invest in our collections and perhaps even in discovery. And for JSTOR, success would mean that JSTOR is perceived as a partner and as a sort of a key piece in the discovery infrastructure, right? That JSTOR is actually a discovery tool and a full text tool at the same time. But we might fail, right? We don't know if this is going to work. We've only been doing it, as Bruce said, for about 6 or 7 weeks. It could be that users say, I don't like the fact that I searched this thing and I keep getting the link resolver. I'm going to change it so that I'm only returning results when it's licensed, right? I'm going to turn off open search and I'm going to limit myself to licensed content. It could be that the resolver presents a bad user experience where the user actually maybe does click on it but doesn't get to what they need to. And either we hear that from them or we can see it in the usage data. And another indicator of failure might be users just simply abandoning JSTOR, doing a search but not clicking on any of the links, right? Just sort of starting and pulling right out and not actually using anything. So all things that are imaginable as failure for this. And for JSTOR, there's a worry, a legitimate worry, that libraries could actually use this as motivation not to expand their JSTOR content, right? So if you can link out to it on another platform, would we do that, and would we therefore not be investing more in JSTOR content? So what have we done so far? Here's a search on the JSTOR platform, just a search for performance American cultural studies. It shows up on this on this results page. There's a book chapter, performance, and it's a book from NYU Press, and you can see that we don't have access to it. There's the little X next to it, and we've got the article linker embedded there. If you click on it, it takes you into our environment, our discovery system. You can see that there's the ability to access this through Credo. There's also down a little bit down near the bottom. There's a requested option in the Alma Primo environment. The term "get it" shows up, right, which means you can get the physical object, and so anything that shows up in that "get it" section is going to be the book, and there is an option to get the print volume down there. And then you could also click through and get it on Credo, right? So JSTOR is passing a user through to Credo in this particular instance. So what? Again, only 6 or 7 weeks, but what unexpected potholes have we encountered? It's been difficult to sort of implement this in a way where we are confident that we are providing a good user experience. The open URL match rate has been really difficult. We're not always getting to the print, and we're not always. It hasn't been as easy as we expect it to be. So one question to think about is what percentage of the time do we think users will find access through another source? We're not really sure, but we want to start thinking about that as we go forward. We're not sure at all what happens after the user links out. We don't know. We're just not really, that's not particularly clear. Alma analytics don't include print sources. I pointed out the get it section, and the get it section doesn't show up in Alma analytics. So we don't know whether they're using it to click out to the print. We're not matching records as highly as we had expected to. And it's hard to match both print and electronic in some cases, simply because of the way the open URL is constructed. And partly this is because we don't have merged print and e records, but there's probably some other issues going on there that we want to explore a little bit more. So again, 6 weeks, but what have we learned so far? 20% of the link outs came from the search results page, so the page with the chapter, right? Right. So the list of the search results, somebody clicks right on the link. They don't actually click in to look at the detailed record. They go right out. And 80% are coming from the detailed record, which could be them clicking on the chapter and then getting into the detailed record and then clicking through. But JSTOR knows that more typically in their overall environment, that means that the user is actually coming from Google, right? So Google into the detailed record and then into the link resolver, which is, to me, an interesting finding, right? That discrepancy is a little surprising, because you would think actually that in many cases somebody would click right on it when they first see the search result, if they're starting with JSTOR or if they're somehow getting to JSTOR from a library environment. We don't really have reliable data to tell us how many of those 20% were able to successfully choose an option from the link resolver and get to the item. One thing we do know, and this is sort of high-level data, and we don't know anything more than this bullet point, but we know that in 2018, JSTOR sent 68 open URL searches to the University of Denver. And this is when we had it set up so that the only time the open URL option showed up, the only time a link resolver showed up, was when a search returned no results. So 68 times. It's happened 294 times in 2019, and it seems very likely that the difference there is probably in the last 6 or 8 weeks since we've set this up. So it seems to be being used, but we don't really know much more than that at this point. I took a look at October circulation of titles that are in JSTOR, so print titles that are in JSTOR. Before we started the project, we identified all of the titles, and I'm sure we missed a few, but all of the titles in our collection that are print titles that are available on JSTOR, and we've been tracking their circulation so that we were able to look at that in relation to this project. So in October, 125 books with an ebook equivalent on JSTOR circulated, so not that many. 75 of these are titles that we had licensed access to on JSTOR, and therefore we were not linking to the print. That's something I'm very interested in doing in the future, but that's a future part of the project, right? The linking from the E to the print when we have access to both. The 50 titles that we did have a link resolver on, because we didn't have licensed access on JSTOR, 34 of them had a link to print in the results list or in the detailed record. So there was at least one of the two was linking somebody out to the print. 16 of those 50 were not linking somebody out to the print, even though we had access to it. 24 of those were linking to print both from the results list and from the detailed record. 5, for whatever reason, linked to the print from the results list, but not the detailed record. And 5, it's the other way around, linking from the detailed record, but not the results list. And this is some of the sort of messiness of the data and of sort of perhaps of the implementation that we really want to try to understand more. So don't really know much more than this. One thing that's sort of a little discouraging is it turns out that only 2 of these titles, 2 of these 50 titles, had any sort of activity in JSTOR around the time of the circulation. So maybe this has nothing to do with this project, and this is just the sort of normal circulation of these titles over that time. But we'll be obviously looking at this over more time. So some early findings. It's not easy to link to print and electronic from an ebook record, but it can be done. We're going to experiment more with this. We're going to try to figure out how to do it better. Some of it might be relying on title matches instead of using a numerical identifier. There could be some other ways to think about it as well. We've chosen to have separate records for print and E, and that causes some problems. So we're not about to change that practice, but that's something that certainly is important to acknowledge, that sort of a local decision about how to present content is at least partially connected to this. So what next? We're talking to Ex Libris to try to understand their open URL report better. We're a little bit confused about how that is reporting usage. We're gonna leave this experiment running throughout the entire academic year, and we'll continue to collect data and try to understand what's going on a little bit better. We will think about whether there are ways of improving the open URL matching so that we can, instead of having 34 of 50 print books getting identified, it'll be 50 of 50, and really 100% across the group of titles we're working on. JSTOR is going to be trying to identify some other institutions to participate in this project, both institutions where they can experiment with journal content, because again, the University of Denver has almost all of the JSTOR content in journals, and therefore we couldn't really use the journals as part of this project. They also want to experiment with other link resolvers to see what sort of behavior happens in those cases. So final poll before we go to Q&A. What do you think? Something that you'd want to try at your institution or not? Okay. So either it's broken. All right. Well, so we'll just sort of let that run, and I think we're now ready to open it up for questions. And please, if you do have a question, please come and use the microphone, and again, state your name and your institution.
While we're doing that, I think it's important. Michael said something that I'm going to restate. Our interest, I'll speak for JSTOR. The interest here is, can we start to build some evidence that says that if we start in a kind of restricted frame like this, that we're interested in, like Michael said, he's interested in seeing us be able to connect ebooks to print books and things of this nature. We're also interested, if this is successful and we find evidence to say it is, like you can see a situation where if someone's finding a reference link in a JSTOR journal or a book or other content we'll have on there, if we can use the same methodology to link, because we're not going to, chances are we're not going to have that stuff on our platform. How do we connect people out to that content in an open way and leveraging the investments that the library already has? We don't want to send people to dead links either. The reason of using the institution's link resolver helps get to that point. So there's an expansive set of things that we can possibly begin to build out of if we start building some evidence in a very small experiment like this, that this is actually a useful idea.
Rich Goss, University of Central Florida. This focuses kind of narrowly in terms of the catalog itself. And when we order things through our ordering system, we use Gobi currently. And so when you look at a specific title, you'll see alternate editions, whether there's print or ebook. But if we get into our catalog and someone's searching for a keyword, and then they'll say, okay, I want to look at the ebooks, and now they've got those results, and then they get down to a specific book, they've lost the linkage to the print version. And I think what I'd like in my catalog is when they're looking at a particular record, they see, because we do format-specific separate bib records, but I'd like to see an alt edition available in the catalog records that links me over to the ebook. When they're down at that individual record level, they'll actually see that, oh, there is another edition available. And I don't know if anybody's implementing something that will actually, down at that level, reestablish the broader search.
Yeah, I think that's a really good suggestion. I also, it's frustrating to me as a relatively sophisticated user of library resources when I search for something in our discovery system and I find the ebook, and I'm pretty certain we have a print copy, and it doesn't necessarily link me from one to another. It would be ideal to always link to every different version from every different record, right? So if we've got a print version and we've got 2 ebook versions, I would want there to be linkages between all of those. And then linkages, if you link out to JSTOR, JSTOR might link you right back to the print, and so on.
My question's sort of on that line. We're just switching to Alma, so I've just started playing around with this, but we see that they have a deduping mechanism in Primo, which seems to be working really well to combine our microfilm and books and our microfilm and journals, but it doesn't seem to do the same for electronic and print. And I haven't started playing around with that to find out why, but have you looked at that at all on the Alma side or on the Primo side?
I don't know if we have. And I'm realizing that I forgot to include a really important slide,
Yes.
which was the 2 people who actually did all the work. And I meant to do that, and we were sort of scrambling to put these slides together yesterday. So I want to actually acknowledge that Jen Brown at the University of Denver and Peter Vlahakis at JSTOR did a tremendous amount of work on the back end, and they're the 2 who could probably answer that question better than I could. So I don't know the answer.
It's one of the interesting things we've seen, at least in the early stages, that you spend all these time on identifiers, right? ISBN, EISBN, and what we found is it actually complicated the linking process. That was very frustrating. We found that we got better linking when we were just doing title matches as opposed to using specific identifiers, and that seemed crazy to me. But I think that's something we have to work through. Whether that's how the open URL is parsed, or whether it's because the identifier is the identifier. So I think that's one of the things we're going to be looking into, because when you start doing these practical implementations of what we have built as standards, and you start to find these holes, you want to figure out how you're going to fix them so they can be used practically. Otherwise, it's just a identifier it's sitting, I mean, I'm sure certainly ISBN has lots of other uses, but we need to figure that one out.
Other questions? Oh, okay.
Steve Shadle, University of Washington. So I have a couple questions here. Is there a standard practice for JSTOR in terms of which format identifier you send out through the open URL when you link out? Is it the EISBN? Is it the PISBN? Is it both of them? Is it?
We typically send both of them.
Okay. Okay, and there's still cases where matching isn't happening even with.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you done? Okay, so have you done an analysis of, Michael, on why the failures when the ISBN has been sent out? I mean, have you looked at the actual catalog records to see whether it's just an old record that never got an ISBN, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've done a little bit of it, and that's certainly some of what we need to be doing over the next as we sort of go further in. So this was the first analysis we've done of sort of results. We did some analysis up front, obviously, of sort of how successful we were in terms of setting it up. But it's a good
So
question that we probably.
Right, you're not at the point of doing failure analysis
Not yet, yeah.
Right,
And
okay.
I think what we need to be doing, though, is now that we have a couple of months almost of use behind us, what's going on in that sort of in the entire space where we know about that usage, and what can we learn from that? And certainly, I've got these examples of 50 titles where only 34 of them are getting to the print.
Right.
And in fact, you could even say only 24 of them are really getting to the print, because 10 of them are only getting to the print from one set
place
of
or another, yeah.
place. Starting to look at those and then understand whether there are any sort of broken pieces is probably a good next step.
We're doing another version of, or the next version of this presentation at ERNL in March and April, and we'll have a lot of that failure analysis done and start to understand a little more about what transpired.
Okay. One other quick question. I assume this is not something that we can just go onto the JSTOR platform and activate ourselves. This is a pilot that you guys are working out in terms of the link out service?
It is a pilot. You can't do it. But I am interested in finding 5 or 6 other institutions who want to participate.
Okay.
We're looking for folks who have different levels of content in JSTOR and have different link resolvers, honestly.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks. Anyone else?
Bruce, I've got a question. I mean, you mentioned that. I guess, what kind of time frame are you looking at as far as, like, we've done this with, Denver, we've done this at other universities. What else, I guess once you get other universities, when do you think you'll be able to wrap it up, I guess, the question.
So I think if we can get 4 or 5 more institutions involved and try to get them going in the spring semester, let that run through the spring and through the fall of next year, I think we'll have enough data to tell us, is it worth like making available to the entire JSTOR participation base, or is it just a wonderful idea, but it just really wasn't all that wonderful. So,
Perfect. We got time for one more. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, I'm Dave Tickerson at California State University, Fresno. I love this concept that you guys have come up with, and it's almost like, duh, why didn't we think of this? We're very good with our discovery systems of driving our users to our vendors because we've paid for that access, and we're so good at it that some people start their search at the vendor end instead of at our end. And if we can drive people back to the library content that we've had in print or any other format, I think this completes the circle and actually will raise the value of the library content in the eyes of our users. So I want to thank you guys for starting this project.
Yeah, thank you. And I think you summarized really, really well why we wanted to be doing this, right? It's about ensuring that that the content we've already invested in is used, and giving users the best experience possible regardless of where they begin their search process.
Okay, thank you for being here. Make sure you fill out the Charleston Conference survey, and also I'd like to thank Bruce and Michael for being here.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.